And that's kind of hard to hear because, like, you'll hear talk about Suge. Damn, man, and you heard me talk about it. I am forced to say that is worse than Suge.
Danny Boy has publicly declared Snoop Dogg to be worse than Suge Knight, on camera, without hesitation. After Snoop personally placed a death row chain around his neck, Danny Boy discovered the piece was entirely counterfeit. But what else transpired behind the scenes to push Danny Boy to this breaking point? And has Snoop issued any response? Let's break it all down. What appeared to be a heartfelt reunion had everyone convinced. But to truly understand why this man launched an all-out public offensive against Snoop Dogg in front of the entire internet, we need to go back to the very beginning. Because this story was never really about a chain. This story begins with a 16-year-old kid from the Austin neighborhood of Chicago who somehow found himself signed to the most formidable record label in hip-hop history. Danny Boy, born Daniel Stewart, was discovered and signed to Death Row Records by Suge Knight at just 16 years old in 1994. And to fully appreciate the gravity of that, you have to understand what Death Row was at that time. It wasn't simply a label, it was the label. It dominated the West Coast. Dr. Dre was engineering groundbreaking production. Tupac Shakur was commanding every recording session he entered. And Snoop Dogg served as the public face of an entire cultural movement. Right there, in the middle of all of that intensity, was this young R&B vocalist from the Midwest who possessed extraordinary talent, laying hooks on records that would go on to become the soundtrack of an entire generation. We're talking about vocal contributions on Tupac's landmark album All Eyes on Me, tracks like I Ain't Mad at Cha, Picture Me Rollin', and Heaven Ain't Hard to Find. These weren't filler cuts. These are anthems, timeless, certified, the kind of records you play at every gathering. And Danny Boy's voice is woven into every single one of them. He even had his own solo single, Slip and Slide, which featured appearances from Tupac, Snoop Dogg, and the Dogg Pound in the accompanying video. But here's the part that rarely gets discussed when Danny Boy's name comes up. Despite all those contributions, despite singing on records that achieved diamond certification, Danny Boy never received a full album release from Death Row. He was logging 8 to 12 hours a day in the studio, cutting record after record, building entire unreleased projects. And he watched the label collapse after Tupac's murder in 1996 and Suge's subsequent incarceration. After everything, he walked away with virtually nothing to show for it. He later spoke publicly about how the stigma of being associated with Death Row made it nearly impossible to secure meetings with other labels. He was trapped, too closely affiliated with the Row to escape its reputation, yet never properly compensated by the Row to benefit from it. Meanwhile, unreleased material he'd recorded with producers like Babyface, Dallas Austin, and DJ Quick sat locked in a vault he couldn't access. A vault that, come 2022, would belong to Snoop Dogg. Fast forward approximately 25 years. Snoop Dogg, the same man who walked those Death Row hallways, acquired the entire label in February 2022. For Danny Boy, that moment carried a particular weight. There was hope, but it was complicated hope. And that alone tells you everything about his state of mind. He wasn't out here begging. He wasn't looking for charity. He was looking for someone to finally do right by an artist who actually helped build the catalog Snoop was now sitting atop. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, things began to move. In 2023, Danny Boy was operating independently, no major label, no large infrastructure behind him, and he had a record that was generating genuine traction. He explained the situation himself in the interview.
Put out a record with the independent company that I was with, and the record was doing pretty cool.
According to Danny Boy, his single climbed to number 10 on the Billboard charts. For an independent artist who had been largely absent from the spotlight for decades, that isn't merely impressive, it's a definitive statement. Apparently, that achievement also caught Snoop's attention, because Danny Boy says the call came completely without warning.
Started moving up the charts, and out of nowhere, Snoop hit me up.
Danny Boy went on to explain that Snoop was effusive in his praise, speaking about God, invoking destiny, saying all the things that would make a man who had been overlooked for his entire career believe that his moment had finally arrived.
Conversation to me when he hit me up is he didn't wait It wasn't this person that put him with me or this person that put me with him.
And what was Snoop supposedly basing this entire reconnection on? According to Danny Boy, Snoop framed it as something cosmically ordained, as though it were bigger than either of them. Now, place yourself in Danny Boy's position for a moment. You felt slighted for years. You once speculated publicly that Snoop may have avoided working with you because of your sexuality. Danny Boy came out as gay in 2016. He had even stated in a prior interview that the Death Row Circle never truly accepted him as one of their own. And now the man who controls the entire operation is on FaceTime, telling you it's God's plan, elevating your talent, speaking about taking you to the next level. Of course you're going to invest in that. Anyone would. And for a brief period, it genuinely appeared as though this story would have a redemptive ending. They linked up and recorded together. Then, in October 2024, they released My Everything, a smooth, nostalgic R&B track through Death Row Gamma, on which Danny Boy sang for Snoop's tribute to his wife. By early 2025, they had Special Kind of Fool out, a remake of a 1990s basic black record. Danny Boy was also featured on Snoop's Death Row Review compilation alongside veterans like the Dog Pound. The public reception was overwhelmingly positive. People were calling it a comeback. It was the feel-good reunion the culture didn't even realize it needed. But even before things fully deteriorated, there were warning signs. Danny Boy had already gone public about Snoop removing his catalog from streaming platforms following the 2022 acquisition, a move that eliminated the royalties Danny Boy depended on. In a November 2025 interview, he stated plainly that Snoop was attempting to starve him out, and he challenged Snoop to sell back his masters, even offering $7 if they were supposedly worthless. He also observed that when Snoop spoke publicly about which artists he intended to support, the names mentioned were invariably his inner circle. Danny Boy's name was conspicuously absent. But what the public didn't know, what none of the press releases or Instagram posts ever suggested, was that behind closed doors, the entire foundation of this partnership was already disintegrating. And it began with a contract, a phone call that went sideways, and a piece of jewelry that turned out to be worth absolutely nothing.
He gave me a contract, and the offer that he gave me was $10,000. He offered me $10,000.
This is where the entire narrative inverts. Danny Boy sat down with the Art of Dialogue on February 16, 2026, and held nothing back. No diplomacy, no carefully curated responses, no publicist-approved language, just raw, unfiltered candor. And what he laid out was a timeline that, taken at face value, makes this entire reunion appear orchestrated from the outset, wrapped in nostalgia and positive energy, but built on what Danny Boy now characterizes as a completely fabricated sense of loyalty. Let's address the financials first, because that's where the fractures initially appeared. According to Danny Boy, when it came time to formalize the business arrangement, Snoop presented him with an offer. And this offer was not what one would expect from a man presiding over a multi-million-dollar enterprise. $10,000 for 2 singles. But that wasn't even the most alarming element. Danny Boy says that when his attorney reviewed the fine print, the contract contained a 7-year exclusivity clause, meaning he would be contractually bound to Snoop and Snoop alone for nearly a decade, all for an amount roughly equivalent to a used vehicle. And consider this context. Danny Boy says he already had a $50,000 offer waiting from the independent label he'd been working with.
At this time, my deal was going to end with them, and these people were going to give me, I asked them for $75,000 to sign my project again, and they agreed to give me $50,000.
So he walked away from a $50,000 opportunity to accept a $10,000 arrangement with Snoop Dogg, based entirely on promises and personal rapport. But when Danny Boy began pushing back on the terms, when he started asking legitimate questions like, "Why does this contract lock me in for 7 years?" Snoop's demeanor shifted entirely. Danny Boy says the text message he received in response was cold and dismissive.
Life that you like that anyway. Suge brought you around. I don't even know you.
CJ brought you around. I don't even know you. Let that statement settle for a moment. This is the same individual who was on FaceTime invoking divine intervention and God's plan. The same person who filmed an entire music video with this man. And the moment Danny Boy questions the business terms, he's suddenly treated as a stranger. That is a remarkable reversal. But Danny Boy's team encouraged him to step back from the ledge and make the best of the situation. After his attorney successfully removed the exclusivity language, Snoop's legal team came back and indicated there had been an error. Danny Boy's actual share was only $7,000 because the producer's fees were to be deducted from the same $10,000 advance. So the $10,000 was really $7,000. A textbook maneuver. But now let's address what truly caused this situation to detonate: the chain. During the filming of the So High video, Snoop made a gesture that, from an outside perspective, appeared to embody genuine mentorship and respect. He removed a death row chain from his own neck in front of the entire crew and placed it directly on Danny Boy. It was a substantial piece, gleaming, appearing to be encrusted with diamonds. Danny Boy described the moment himself.
He offered me, he give me this chain, I put it on, and I'm living in the middle of the hood. Nice spot, but I'm in the hood where it go down there.
Danny Boy took that chain back to the west side of Chicago and wore it as a badge of honor. He wasn't wearing it for the aesthetics. He wore it because of what it symbolized: acceptance, loyalty, a legitimate seat at the table of the label that defined his formative years. And he was moving through one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the country with what he believed to be a genuine diamond-encrusted death row pendant around his neck. He was even carrying a firearm because of how seriously he took the chain's perceived value. And then came the moment that changed everything. Danny Boy took the chain to a jeweler to have it cleaned.
This ain't shit. This ain't worth shit.
The jeweler told him directly, that chain is fake. Not diamonds, not gold, cubic zirconia, moissanite at best. Essentially costume jewelry designed to resemble the real thing. Now let that register fully. This man was navigating one of the most volatile neighborhoods in Chicago, armed and vigilant, protecting a chain he believed Snoop Dogg had personally blessed him with. And the entire time, the piece around his neck was worth less than what you'd find at a retail kiosk. Danny Boy made it unequivocally clear what that realization meant to him.
So not only did you f with me while I had going on, you kind of put me in danger. Because where I was living, a nigga would have thought this was worth something.
And that is precisely what elevates this situation from standard industry grievance to something far more consequential. Danny Boy isn't merely saying Snoop gave him an inexpensive gift. He's saying the optics of that gift, a large, heavy, apparently diamond-laden chain handed to him on camera by one of the most recognizable figures in hip-hop, could have placed his life in genuine danger. In neighborhoods like the ones Danny Boy was living in, people are targeted over jewelry that appears valuable regardless of whether it actually is. The streets don't send a piece to a jeweler before they rob you. He even attempted to resell the chain, believing the Snoop Dogg Association might lend it some secondary market value. No one was interested. He tried to auction it. Still no buyers. He described the dead-end situation with a line that has since gone viral across the internet.
I don't think he considered that. He just wanted to look like, just like what he do with everybody else. I'm gonna pass out all these
That moment, the realization that the entire gesture was performative, that the man behind it may never have intended for it to carry real weight, is what destroyed the relationship irreparably. And the consequences didn't end with the chain. Danny Boy also stated on record that he had assembled a $5 million international performance deal for Snoop, with his commission set at approximately $250,000. But Snoop's team allegedly went silent, and the money never materialized. Beyond that, Danny Boy says Snoop blocked him on Instagram after he began publicly tagging him about the unresolved issues. And what did Danny Boy do after being blocked? He went right back and tagged Snoop again, calling him exactly what he felt he was. From that point forward, Danny Boy had something very specific and very explosive to say about who Snoop Dogg truly is beneath the affable Uncle Snoop brand.
Kind of hard to hear because, like, you'll hear a motherfucker talk about Suge. Damn, man, and you heard me talk about it. I am forced to say that is worse than Suge.
This is where the situation escalated beyond anything anyone anticipated. Danny Boy didn't simply expose the fake chain and the predatory contract and leave it there. He went to a place where very few people in the history of hip-hop have ever ventured when discussing Snoop Dogg. He looked directly into the camera and stated, without hesitation or qualification, that Snoop is worse than Suge Knight. You have to appreciate the magnitude of that declaration. Suge Knight is a man currently incarcerated, a figure inextricably linked to intimidation, coercion, and some of the most notorious chapters in hip-hop history. And Danny Boy, who was essentially raised by Suge from the age of 16, who lived in his home, who Suge became legal guardian of, is sitting here telling the world that Snoop Dogg, the beloved Uncle Snoop, who carried the Olympic torch and appears on cereal boxes, is somehow worse than all of that. That is an extraordinary claim to make publicly.
All bullshit aside, let the balloons down. Naked room. There's nothing in the room. There's nothing but honesty.
And his reasoning
isn't rooted in physical intimidation or violence. It's about something he considers equally egregious: the manipulation, the smoke and mirrors. Danny Boy's central argument is that Suge, for all his well-documented transgressions, at least operated with transparency about who he was. Suge was straightforward. He put actual money in people's pockets before he ever took from them.
Suge took care of his people. Suge took care of him. I don't know what their business was because I told you how I felt about my business, but he took care of us.
Then Danny Boy drew the sharpest contrast he possibly could: the chains. He pointed out that during the original Death Row era, Suge distributed real gold chains, 10 to 15 karat pieces, even to single mothers at community events he organized on Mother's Day, feeding 500 to 600 families in the process.
Can't wait for to hear some of them that's sitting around waiting for Snoop to roll something off the table that they have. You meet him, you getting everybody these old fake-ass baddie chains.
Then Danny Boy drew the sharpest contrast he possibly could: the chains. He pointed out that during the original Death Row era, Suge distributed real gold chains, 10 to 15 karat pieces, even to single mothers at community events he organized on Mother's Day, feeding 500 to 600 families in the process.
Wasn't passing out no motherfucking fake jewelry. Suge fed 500 to 600 single mothers on Mother's Day.
Allow that comparison to breathe for a moment. Suge was giving real chains to people he had no personal relationship with. Snoop allegedly gave a counterfeit one to someone he called family. Danny Boy was not going to let that contradiction pass without comment.
Death Row medallions, and them motherfuckers was little 10, 15 karat little chains. They were real.
Those were small Death Row medallions on 10 to 15 karat chains. They were real. And then Danny Boy delivered what may be the most incisive observation of the entire interview: that Snoop is distributing cheap promotional chains and outdated Death Row merchandise to people, essentially converting them into unpaid walking advertisements.
Can't wait for to hear some of them that's sitting around waiting for Snoop to roll something off the table that they have. You meet him, you getting everybody these old fake-ass baddie chains.
Danny Boy also addressed something that was clearly weighing on him heavily: how Snoop handled the passing of Jewel. For those unfamiliar, Jewel was a legendary vocalist from the original Death Row roster who made significant contributions to the catalog. According to Danny Boy, Snoop showed no acknowledgement whatsoever when it mattered most.
But when a person like Jewel died, I bet you that didn't even go to the service. I bet you he didn't send a flower. You didn't send a flower to Jewel's funeral.
Those were small Death Row medallions on 10 to 15 karat chains. They were real. And then Danny Boy delivered what may be the most incisive observation of the entire interview: that Snoop is distributing cheap promotional chains and outdated Death Row merchandise to people, essentially converting them into unpaid walking advertisements.
with it.
I don't ever want to work with that nigga again. For nothing. Like, unless somebody like, oh, it's a big bag, Death Row going on.
For Danny Boy, that said everything. Here was a woman who contributed directly to the very catalog from which Snoop now profits. And according to Danny Boy, the man running Death Row couldn't even send a floral arrangement to her funeral. He noted that Jewel had been working a regular job toward the end of her life and even had a GoFundMe campaign. Meanwhile, Snoop was gifting money on live streams to individuals with no connection to the label's legacy. Danny Boy also referenced Lady of Rage, another original Death Row artist, suggesting she should have been elevated to an executive position under Snoop's leadership. Instead, the seats at the table were occupied by what Danny Boy characterized as sycophants. And here's what makes all of this even more significant: Danny Boy is far from the only person voicing these concerns. Since Snoop acquired Death Row in 2022, an increasing number of individuals connected to the label have come forward with grievances about how he's operating. Daz Dillinger, Snoop's own blood cousin and co-founder of the Dog Pound, went fully public, accusing Snoop of stealing royalties, forging signatures, blocking him from producing on his own group's project, and secretly trademarking their assets behind his back in preparation for a potential billion-dollar catalog sale. Daz called Snoop a liar and a thief directly and threatened legal action. Snoop responded with equal force, telling Daz he was broke and that he'd handle the matter through proper business channels. Then there's Suge Knight himself, who even from behind prison walls in a March 2025 interview went directly at Snoop, questioning whether the acquisition was even legitimate, demanding to see documentation, and accusing Snoop of dismantling everything the Death Row name once represented. Suge stated that when he ran the operation, the Dog Pound moved units, and under Snoop's stewardship, those same artists underperformed. Even Nate Dogg's son, Nagel, came forward alleging that Snoop obtained his late father's masters from his grandmother's home without the family's full consent. Snoop denied the claim, but the accusation added yet another layer to an already precarious foundation. So the inevitable question arises, one that everyone is asking: what does Snoop have to say about any of this? And the answer, at least as of now, is essentially nothing. No official response from Snoop or his representatives has been confirmed regarding Danny Boy's fake chain allegations or any of the broader accusations of mistreatment. As of February 19, 2026, there are YouTube videos circulating with titles suggesting Snoop responded, but those are entirely misleading. Reaction channels recycling old, unrelated quotes in which Snoop vaguely referenced jealousy in completely different contexts. The silence, however, is conspicuous, and it's consistent with his approach. This is how Snoop historically handles virtually every controversy originating from former Death Row associates. He lets it circulate, lets it trend, lets the memes run their course, and then lets it fade from public consciousness. Whether that constitutes shrewd business strategy or a guilty conscience is something only he can answer. As for the public response, the hip-hop community reacted immediately. The primary clip garnered over 378,000 views on YouTube. Instagram Reels accumulated more than 16,000 likes and nearly 2,000 comments. Much of the discourse leaned toward humor. The baddies chain phrase went viral overnight, and a significant number of commenters labeled Danny Boy as ungrateful for attempting to sell a gift in the first place. But there was also a substantial contingent holding Snoop accountable, connecting this incident to the Daz Dillinger situation and constructing a broader narrative of what they described as performative generosity masking genuine exploitation. But perhaps the most impactful element of this entire saga is what Danny Boy said at its conclusion. Because despite everything, the counterfeit chain, the exploitative deal, the disrespect, he insists he isn't bitter. He's simply done.
Give me the masters, give me my shit. Let me have it.
And what is Danny Boy doing now? During the week, he works at a funeral home. On the weekends, he's still performing, because that is the one thing no one can take from him. Not Suge, not Snoop, not any label, not any contract. Through all the noise, the viral memes, the baddies chain jokes, the comment sections erupting, Danny Boy's message was unambiguous. He isn't asking for charity. He's demanding what is rightfully owed to him. In a prior interview, he stated it plainly: return his masters. Release the unreleased music locked away in the Death Row vault. Give me the masters. Give me my music. Let me have it. And if Snoop sees no value in it, Danny Boy said he'll purchase it all back himself, for $7. That is a man who has endured the full spectrum. The highs of recording alongside Tupac Shakur at the peak of his creative powers. The lows of watching the label disintegrate around him. The improbable second chance that ultimately proved just as hollow as a cubic zirconia pendant. And he's still standing, still singing, still firmly planted, fighting for what belongs to him. Whether you believe Danny Boy is justified or ungrateful, whether you view Snoop as an astute businessman or a fundamentally dishonest operator, one thing is beyond dispute. This was never just about a chain. This is about what that chain represents. It's about a man who lent his voice to some of the greatest records ever pressed, who waited decades for his opportunity, who was summoned back to the table by the biggest name in hip-hop, only to discover that the table, the food, and the silverware were all made of plastic. And if there's a lesson embedded in all of this, Danny Boy already delivered it. You reap what you sow, and karma doesn't miss anyone. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, click on one of the options displayed on your screen to view more related content.